McLaren driver Lando Norris has praised his new teammate Oscar Piastri, stating the Australian is keeping him on his toes. After 3 races, Piastri has been outqualified by Norris 2-1, but was the first and so far only McLaren in Q3 this year in Saudi Arabia. In races, it's once each when they could be compared. But Norris says while Piastri has understood the difficult MCL 60 car well, it's his similar technical feedback that ensures the team moves in a single direction in terms of development. We kind of want the same anything in general, and I think that's a good thing. So from both sides, the off-track and the on-track, it's a good start, and he's keeping me on my toes, he said. Miami is deep in a major cleanup after successive days of heavy rain last week led to flooding throughout the Floridian city with its F1 event on the horizon. Miami's downtown streets were brought to a standstill following heavy storms, with schools reopened this week. Floods are nothing new in Miami, given the combination of heavy rainfall, bad drainage, rising sea levels, and low elevation. The Miami Grand Prix, set for May 7, is held on a temporary street track around Hard Rock Stadium, with a sellout crowd expected. Mercedes Chief Technical Officer James Allison says that the Silver Squad has focused its forthcoming aero and suspension upgrades on improving the W14's drivability from Baku. Merck's Top Gun Sir Lewis Hamilton has complained that he can't connect with his car and that he sits too far forward in the cockpit, compromising his confidence, and as a result, performance out on track. But Allison says that the squad is focused on making changes during the 28-day break before the next race in Azerbaijan.
We'll be working in the drawing office also to bring some mechanical parts to the car, some different suspension components that we think will help the underlying balance of the car and make it a more drivable thing, making it something that the drivers have more confidence to push right to the limits.
Team boss Toto Wolff praised Allison, stating that he is still very important to the organization, but said he's not involved in improving the W14, with Merck's technical director Mike Elliott still at the helm. Red Bull boss Christian Horner has told his rivals to keep their hands off the squad's chief technical officer Adrian Newey, with the veteran Brit set to stay at Milton Keynes for many years to come. It was reported earlier this year that Newey's contract was up for renewal, but Horner has since gone on the offensive, stating that it's just a rumor and that the 64-year-old's heart is still in F1. We don't talk about contracts or longevity of contracts, but he'll be here for many years to come, Horner said. Newey is the most successful Grand Prix car designer of all time, with his machinery earning 11 constructors and 12 drivers' titles. Esteban Ocon says his Alpine squad must believe it can make the same jump in performance that Aston Martin did over the 2022-23 winter break, otherwise there's no point in racing. The French squad finished 4th in the standings as best of the rest in 2022, with 6th its current position and 5th its likely ceiling this year, with Aston Martin rising up to become a top squad. However, while Ocon says that he's at the Enstone factory at least once a week now and has seen some interesting ideas from the drawing office, he wants to see Alpine make a sizable step forward. Aston Martin has shown, and fair play to them, that it is possible to make a big step if you find the right things. So it is doable, he said. Williams team boss James Vowles says the squad knows it now has the pace to fight for points at every round this year, despite just one banked for Alex Albon's 10th place at the season opener in Bahrain. Williams began 2023 with the 9th fastest time per team in preseason testing, but has shown strong race pace with its FW45 car, a definite step forward over its predecessor. But while reliability issues and crashes have robbed the squad of points, Val says the pace gives him hope for future success.
What's clear is that of the first 3 races, we have been in a position to fight for points at all of them. In Bahrain, obviously translating to a point. In the case of Melbourne, unfortunately walking away with absolutely nothing. But even in Saudi, there were moments where clearly we could do a very competitive time and be in and amongst the mix. It needs perfection, but the car is there.
1996 F1 World Champion Damon Hill says that he thinks Lance Stroll deserves his place on the grid with Aston Martin, but says he's not a future world champion as it stands this season. Hill says there's more potential in every driver than they realize, but in a post-Melbourne chat with the sport's official podcast F1 Nation, said that Stroll's capacity across 125 starts is clear.
I think Lance has got the natural ability. I don't think, as he stands today, he is a future world champion standalone on his own merits in the same way that Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton are. He'd be knocking spots off of Fernando Alonso if he was that person.
Hill also said there was only one ultimate way for Stroll to find out his place in the pecking order, beyond destroying Alonso's career.
If he really wants to know the answer, then he'd have to go and drive for a different team. Then he'd be able to escape all those issues. You know, he would sink or swim.
Haas boss Gunther Steiner has blamed unnecessary costly crashes for Mick Schumacher's exit from the squad at the end of 2022, with the last straw his in-lap shunt during FP1 at Suzuka. Schumacher spent 2 years at Haas, but went beyond the limit in trying to beat teammate Kevin Magnussen in 2022, with the damage bill from his crashes in Saudi Arabia, Monaco, and Japan totaling $2 million, with Suzuka alone worth $700,000. Sure, it was very wet out there on the track, but nobody else managed to write off a car while they were driving back to the pits, said Steiner in his new autobiography, Surviving to Drive. Ex-Grand Prix driver Jonathan Palmer has opened up on his former rival Ayrton Senna's death at Imola in 1994, stating that it was unfathomable, as the Brazilian was like a god. Senna was killed on lap 7 of the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix after his Williams car left the track at Tamburello and crashed into the concrete barrier. And Palmer, then commentating for the BBC, said to F1's official podcast Beyond the Grid, the sport was in deep shock.
This was unfathomable. You know, Ayrton was like a god. You know, it can't happen to Ayrton. Yes, we'd had Roland Ratzenberger on the Friday, but that was a sort of Simtech car and a back-end, you know, driver, all sorts of reasons why, you know, people make mistakes, the car might have broken. It was another end of the whole of Formula One and its drivers and its technology. But Ayrton Senna in a Williams, no, this can't be happening. It was almost disbelief. You know, you knew it was happening, but it was very hard to believe that it wasn't some sort of bad dream.
F1 remains on a break, so the beach was the place to be last weekend. Long Beach in California, where 2 familiar faces followed home first-time IndyCar race winner Andretti Autosport's Kyle Kirkwood. Kirkwood led from pole, but there was no shortage of action as McLaren pilot Pato O'Ward passed Chip Ganassi's Scott Dixon for 6th, with the New Zealander left with nowhere to go but the tyre barrier. But up front it was Kirkwood for the win, with Romain Grosjean 2nd for an Andretti 1-2. With Marcus Ericsson 3rd to extend his IndyCar standings lead to 15 points over O'Ward after 3 rounds. Thanks for watching. To stay up to speed on all things Formula One, make sure you hit the subscribe button.